If you apply sort of the concept of precedent to business, technology, art, science, culture, our everyday lives, there are invisible rules that shape our societal systems every single day. And what I love about the word precedent is that it's not just a rule, it's not just a tradition. Because if you break a rule or you break a tradition, it's like, okay, you've done something differently. But if you break a precedent and you set a new precedent, that means you're paving a path for everyone behind you, for everyone that comes after you.
We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back. Or maybe it's your first time with us. Welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. As you may or may not know, this is the show every week where I get to have conversations with the best and brightest, what I call entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society and industry, as we come together to try and do two basic things. One, kind of converse about how to navigate this ever complicated world that we live in. And then in hopes that ideally we figure out how to navigate it together, and maybe we leave you clues to how we can leave this world a little bit better than we found it. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Leah Solivan, the founder and principal at Precedent VC. She's an author. She's a pro podcaster, which you will notice, I'm sure, as we get going into this conversation, and is an all-around rebel in a conventional world. And we're going to get her to help explain that to us as we dive into this conversation today. So let me tell you a little bit about her before we welcome her to the show. Leah is, in my humble opinion, already kind of the best type of guest for the show because she was referred to us by one of our alumnus of the show and a great friend, Jolynn Vallejo. And so in my mind, that means that Jolynn already believes that this is going to be a great conversation. And that means to me that Leah arrives here today as an entrepreneurial thinker. But beyond that, let me tell you more about her experiences in life to this point. She is a seasoned advisor, an entrepreneur, an investor, an engineer, and a precedent breaker. Many people know Leah as the founder of TaskRabbit, the pioneering marketplace platform that helped transform how millions of people think about work, services, and the on-demand economy. What started as a simple idea grew into this international company that ultimately led to a successful acquisition by IKEA. But what fascinated me most about Leah's journey is not so much what she built, but it's her willingness to continually challenge her own assumptions about everything, including reinventing herself, and how to step into comfortably and sometimes uncomfortably into new arenas where others might have chosen a safer, more easily traveled path. She's had a great career in hand when she decided to chase this life-altering path of being a startup entrepreneur. And again, after building and exiting a category-defining company, she honestly could have sought out another industry or consumer problem to tackle and just kind of continued on that entrepreneurial, serial entrepreneurship route. But instead, she transitioned into venture capital, investing in and advising this next generation of founders to help them solve our biggest problems. And today, she is the founding and managing director of Precedent VC, which is an early-stage VC firm focused on backing entrepreneurs who are creating new markets, challenging conventional wisdom, and rewriting the rules in their industry. Leah, it's great to have you on the podcast this morning. So nice to meet you.
Rob, I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you for that intro. It was so nice.
My pleasure. I say it's always a great way to start a day, and it's a pleasure to read cool words about stuff that people have already done. Right?
You've clearly done your homework.
I'm regurgitating you to the world, right? So you've led a pretty interesting life, it sounds like.
I feel like I have. And, I love the title of your show, Entrepreneurial Thinkers, because it's something that I talk a lot about is having this entrepreneurial mindset. And it's certainly been something that's guided me throughout my career.
So with that said, great segue. I have a feeling you're going to be the fantastic guest because you're going to set me up for every question really well. Right. So my first question is on this theme and kind of the theme that we hear in your introduction. Why is it, in your opinion, why is it that some people spend their lives accepting the rules while others feel compelled to constantly rewrite them?
Well, that is a big question, some of which I unpack in my forthcoming book called Breaking Precedent.
Okay.
And we go through kind of chapter by chapter, case studies and stories of people that are shifting society, that are challenging societal norms, that are changing industries, sort of like what I did with TaskRabbit, helping to start the gig economy and challenging what the future of work was going to look like. And now, as you said, I back this next generation of rebels. I love using the word rebels because I feel like you have to have kind of that mentality, that edge to be able to challenge those systems, these invisible, hidden rules that are precedents that really do control our everyday lives. That, I think it's easy to not think about. I think it's
Sure.
the easy path to forget about them, right? But, I think my first taste of this when I founded TaskRabbit and got into that entrepreneurial mindset and started to ask questions. And the main question I asked was, does it really have to be this way?
Wow.
Is there really not?
Talk about a life-altering question, right? I mean,
right. I mean, if you just stop during your day, every day, normal day, and ask yourself, does it really have to be this way? I guarantee you're going to see some things that you could actually change in your life.
Absolutely.
Large and small.
Wow. That is fantastic. Literally, you're like testimonializing entrepreneurial thinking in my mind. This is awesome. You worked, not necessarily started, but you worked a big chunk of your professional life inside of Big Six Consulting. I mean, that is a world that is literally built on structure and frameworks and pattern recognition.
Mm-hmm.
At what point, or was there a catalytic kind of moment or experience in that journey where you started to say, wait a minute, I think I'm this person. I think I'm this observational human that goes through my day to day and starts to always is asking, why is it this way? Does it have to be this way? Like, was there a catalytic moment in that, hey, I could just be a great consultant for the rest of my life?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. And so I graduated from college in 2001. It was the height of the dot-com burst, right? The bubble had burst. I had majored in math and computer science. So I was looking for an engineering job. I was lucky at the time to get an engineering job. It wasn't actually as a programmer, but it was as a quality engineer. And so I worked for a smaller startup that got bought by Lotus. Lotus got bought by IBM. We all got merged into IBM within 6 months of me starting this job. Now, as a quality engineer, it was my job to find problems in the code, find what we call bugs, right, as engineers. Yeah. But what I really wanted to do was be a programmer, be a developer, code. And that's what I had been trained to do in college, but it was such a tough job market. Honestly, I was just relieved to have a job coming out of school in 2001.
Exactly, yes. There was a lot of things that got sacrificed by the bubble bursting.
Absolutely. And so I spent 8 years there as, in the software development section of IBM for a company of 400,000 people. Like you said, massive, massive company. But I would say sort of 4 or 5 years in, like kind of halfway in of that 8, I remember having a meeting with one of my technical bosses, my technical leaders. And he had asked me to kind of look at this code, look at this bug, and suggest a fix to it. And I was pretty proud of myself. I had spent time debugging the code. I had figured out how to fix it. And I wasn't yet in that engineering role that I wanted to be in on a daily basis. And so I marched down to the senior developer's office, and I'm really excited to show him this beautiful solution that I had come up with. And so I get down there and I walk him through it. And I'm really proud of myself. And he kind of pushes his chair back from his desk and he looks at me and he says, Leah, you're really ambitious, aren't you? And I thought, ambition's a good thing. Like
the tone didn't sound like it was meant to be a compliment.
Exactly. And it kind of took me a second to process the tone because it didn't match what he was saying in my mind. And so I was confused. But after, sort of 30 seconds or so, and he says, you're really ambitious. And he's just kind of smiling at me in silence. I realized in that moment, okay, maybe ambition is not a good thing here at IBM where I'm trying to build this career and I'm not going to be rewarded for thinking differently, for pushing the boundaries. And I would say, I mean, that moment has stuck with me. And I think it was maybe kind of the first flag for me that I could do more, that I could go beyond, and that I could find a place where I would also be rewarded for that thinking.
And you're still a relatively, if I'm doing the chronology in my head, you're still a relatively young person. I mean, you're
I'm in my mid-20s.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like a handful of years out of college and in this first job, which a job that in the context of the world around you, you're like, holy cow, maybe I should just quiet down and be grateful to have this job. Maybe I'm not supposed to be ambitious right now. Like maybe I'll be ambitious in like 2010, but right now, like, but so like,
and I think most people would.
Right. And then, I mean, layer on top of that, I say this a little context, like as a girl dad, right?
Yes.
Like layer on top of that, you're a mid-20s
100%.
young woman, right?
Yes.
In a super dominated tech kind of, macho machismo type of culture.
Yes. I mean, I wonder if he would have said that too.
Right.
I don't know.
No, of course.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Chisos Capital. Everyone knows that raising capital is hard. And frankly, finding the next pool of entrepreneurs to get access to as limited investors is sometimes impossible too. Do you have a big idea, a dream you're building, but you're struggling to find early funding? Well, Chisos is changing the game for founders, creators, athletes, and investors. Whether you're launching a startup, growing your creative brand, or training for the big leagues, Chisos backs you. Chisos uniquely invests up to $100,000 in people, not just products, whether they be entrepreneurs, creators, or even athletes. With their unique CISA model, convertible income share agreements, founders get flexible funding without giving up equity or ownership, and investors get attractive returns and great upside with less risk. Chisos works for both investors and the people bringing our world to life. If you're seeking access to a truly diverse pool of deals, or you're someone who feels overlooked by the VC game, Chisos is ready to back you. So apply now at chisos.io.
Right? No, of course not. We both know the answer. We don't know that. I don't know that man, but we'll just safely say he probably wouldn't have said that.
So I think like that is a societal norm, right? That's an invisible precedent that I hit at that moment of being too ambitious. And that stuck out to me. Yeah.
Let's peel this onion back right away. Like talk about the word precedent, like, because you obviously you've built now a thesis, a view of life for yourself first, and then for others around this. And I think it's amazing, but I want you to explain it to us instead of just Merriam's dictionary, right? So what does the word precedent mean to you? And then kind of how does it show up when you see things?
Yeah. Well, okay. I love this word. I've become obsessed with this word. And this is, I think, been a journey over the last 15 to 20 years, not only, building and selling TaskRabbit, but then as an investor as well, the companies and founders that I work with, the ideas that I've seen built. So precedent, as a definition, right? They're invisible rules that shape our lives. And in the law, in the legal industry, precedent is extremely important. In the law, precedent is only broken less than 1% of the time. And, usually if it's broken, it's a bad thing in the law. Lawyers hate breaking precedent, right? And so if you apply sort of the concept of precedent to business, technology, art, science, culture, our everyday lives, there are invisible rules that shape our societal systems every single day. And what I love about the word precedent is that it's not just a rule, it's not just a tradition. Because if you break a rule or you break a tradition, it's like, okay, you've done something differently. But if you break a precedent and you set a new precedent, that means you're paving a path for everyone behind you, for everyone that comes after you. That's why I'm so excited about this concept of precedent and really bringing it to the forefront in a way that people can feel empowered and can grasp and can own. And, any precedents that they set, they can be also paving the path for others that come after them.
Boy, I love this on so many levels. One, I'm a bit of a word nerd, right? So I'm one of those people that extols the virtues of like words matter, right? And they do. And you just illustrated beautifully why in a whole bunch of different reasons. But also, I never really thought about this word that way until you described it, right? The idea we can break norms, we can break traditions, and okay, but it feels more like you're just breaking through something, and then it kind of snaps back into place, and it's still there, right? But
That's right.
Implied in precedent is this notion that when you break one, you have established a new one. And it can
You've
be
set a new standard.
It can be a bad one sometimes, like as you alluded,
they're not all good.
People can break precedents and then establish new ones, and that's like, oh, we just established a whole bunch of bad precedents.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
But
Absolutely.
the way you're envisioning it and applying it to your life so far, and now with helping others to see it and understand it is obviously in the affirmative way, in the positive way.
And one thing that I've thought a lot about too is that I don't think there are large and small precedents. I think all precedents are created equal. And what I mean by that is when I look back at my life, I was the first woman in my family to go to college. I also started TaskRabbit, which shifted the, future of work in the gig economy. When I compared those two precedents that were broken in my life, to me, they're equal. To me, they stand on the same ground. They're just as big, being the first woman in my family to go to college versus like starting this company, right? And changing the future of work. So I think, precedents are so personal sometimes as well. They can be structures in your family. They can be inherited norms from your culture, all kinds of different things. But I think they all can be distilled back down to, does it really have to be this way?
Yeah. No,
can I do something differently?
Beautifully simple. I'm curious, and as I said, not to diminish the extreme accomplishment of building TaskRabbit and selling it. I mean, that is like not only the dream of most entrepreneurs, but it is also just an incalculably difficult thing to do, which is why most people fail in that pursuit. So you did good in that sense. And what I want to know is kind of pull pieces apart. And one of the pieces that as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about is like, a business like TaskRabbit, let's just say, that industry, right, is so data driven and so scale driven, right? I mean, that's the whole point, is like figuring out the metrics and then how do you scale those metrics, and can it repeat itself and be profitable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Most companies, even the quote unquote known successful ones, struggle at that, right? As you went through that process, like you're facing a tension between like what the data is telling you and you're building it from scratch. So it's like, wow, we should really learn from what the data is telling you. But then you're Leah, like you're looking in the mirror every morning. And so how, and again, like, and I say this with all utter respect, like a relatively young person, like doing all these things, you're I'm 58 years old. You're not like some 65-year-old with a whole bunch of life experience going, this is the wisdom, this is the shortcut, right? So how did you find the I don't know, the belief in yourself? Like, how did you find that, like, okay, in these moments, I'm intuitively going to trust Leah's instincts versus the data because I believe that there's a different way we can pattern this data that will unlock TaskRabbit to be even more successful?
Yeah, I think for me, it was a couple things. And because of my background in engineering, I really started with the technology layer. Okay. And at the time that I had the idea for TaskRabbit, there were some really new emerging technologies coming out. One of them was the iPhone had just come out, 4 months earlier before I had the idea. All of a sudden, we carried around these devices which could connect us in real time with real people, location awareness. The other technology that was emerging at the time was the social graph. So Facebook in 2008 was just breaking out of the college scene, becoming more mainstream. I had just gotten my first Facebook account.
Oh my goodness.
And I sort of realized that these new technologies, specifically social location and mobile technologies, could be mashed together, could collaborate together to connect real people in the real world to get real things done. Fast forward 5 years from that, it became in real time because everyone wants things done in real time, right? And so I lit the technology wave that was occurring in 2008 carry the idea, carry me, because I had conviction and confidence in that new technology as an engineer.
Okay. Right.
I was able to see the future through that technology lens.
Okay. So you're literally looking at it saying like, I know this independently is hugely changed, like a shift of everything.
Yes.
This is hugely empowering. This tool is going to be the way people are going to do stuff. And if I can find that kind of layer of connectivity between these around this central theme that we're working on, like this should take off.
Yes. That's exactly where I was coming from. And I turned out to be right. Now, I think
obviously, yes.
the other thing that was happening that I did not foresee at the time was in the fall of 2008, 4 months after I quit my job at IBM, we hit the Great Recession.
And boy, your career timing was impeccable so far.
I know, right? I mean, I wish I could say this was all foresight. It was not. It was luck. It was,
sure.
I started building the site in June of 2008. By September, the site was ready and launched, and all these people were being laid off of work. And needed new ways of working. And so I hit that timing dead on. Now, for me, it was a little terrifying because I had just quit my, stable, cushy job at IBM to go build this startup. So it was dicey there for me for, a good 18 months or so before I really had the confidence that it was going to work.
That's incredible. Jumping forward, tell us the story about Precedent VC. Like this is kind of your commercial. Right. So we'll do the VC basics questions, right? What's the thesis? Who are the limited partners that have supported you? How do you see the fund serving your life? How do you see the fund growing? We'll cover all of that stuff. But like for now, just kind of give us the story of how you post TaskRabbit, again, when presented with options and lots of choices in life and paths you could choose to go down. You didn't retire some oligarchic billionaire. So obviously you were probably going to want to work and do some creative stuff and challenge your mind and all that. But like you could have gone a whole bunch of different ways, but you went this way. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I love learning. I love learning new things. That's what motivates me the most. And I kind of had my head down in TaskRabbit for a decade, one tech stack, one focus. And when I picked up my head and sold the company to IKEA, I knew I wanted to do something different. I knew I wanted to learn a different industry. And so that's when I jumped over to the venture side full time. I got pulled in that direction by a lot of different people and firms and friends that I'd pitched over the years. I spent 10 years raising money for TaskRabbit. I raised about $50 million. I pitched every VC in Silicon Valley and some on the East Coast too, right? And many of whom, I've stayed very close with, who are my dearest friends today. So I loved the idea of venture investing, but I didn't know if it was going to be for me. But I jumped in, and for the last 10 years, have been at a firm called Fuel Capital, where I've done early stage seed investing alongside another partner who founded the firm. But, more recently, over the last 2 years, it really started with my podcast, Breaking Precedent.
Okay.
And I was on maternity leave with my last baby, and I wanted a creative project. I was like, I want to do something more creative. This podcasting thing seems interesting. I had started to create this thesis around the word precedent, the idea precedent, and I wanted to tell people stories. And so I started interviewing leaders across industries. I didn't want it to just be business and tech people. I wanted to interview artists and activists and politicians. And so that first season of Breaking Precedent, I did all via audio, no video. It was just a fun project for me.
Amen, sister. I got dragged into video by one of my millennial producers.
I know. And I had so much fun, in fact, that it turned into a book proposal that I then took out to market, after that first season. So then the baby's 1 year old. I take the book to market, and I get a book deal done around this concept of breaking precedent. Yeah. And so for the last year now, so the baby's going to be 2 this August. For the last year, I did season 2 of the podcast. I incorporated a video this time, which has actually made it even more fun. And, you can produce the clips.
It's different. It's different. It creates a whole nother layer to it.
Yes,
I'm still
layer of engagement.
as a consumer, when I go on my walks, I like to plug it in. I still listen to podcasts, right? Including our own sometimes.
Yes.
But yes, I mean, it is.
It's true. When I'm driving, I always have a podcast on. So I'm not always consuming video either. But if I'm on like Instagram or socials, right, I'm usually catching the clips from people. So, I've been lucky enough to interview some of the most incredible, creative, precedent-breaking minds out there. People like Tamara Rojo, who is the artistic director of the San Francisco Ballet, the first female artistic director they have had in almost 100-year history. Awesome. I just interviewed Joanna Strober from MIDI Health. Let's talk about menopause and women's health and the first company to reach $1 billion valuation in that space, right? Like just absolutely incredible. D Nice, Derek Jones, who, during COVID started Club Quarantine and did all these DJ sets. So just like really fun, incredible stories, amazing people. Turned it into a book. The book captures some of my TaskRabbit stories as well about how we helped create the gig economy and change the future of work, stories I haven't shared before. And so when I signed the book deal last August, I decided, you know what, this is the time to spin out my own firm and my own fund. And I wanted to call it Precedent VC.
I can't imagine you calling it anything else in retrospect, right?
Yeah, we've got the podcast, we've got the book deal in place. And I was like, okay, I want to invest in not just the next interesting company or interesting brand or interesting product. I want to invest in the next generation of category defining, precedent setting founders and companies. And then specifically who are building for the consumer. I have a real passion around consumer. I ran and exited, a consumer company. And I think consumer is a category that has been overlooked for the last decade, particularly by venture.
Sorry to interrupt you on that. Like, why do you think that?
I think that consumer has been out of favor by venture capitalists because it's hard to get the multiples. I think SaaS.
That's what I was going to say, because it's hard, it's too costly to be successful, et cetera.
And SaaS has been in favor and, sort of these repeatable pattern models of revenue, but consumers hard. Consumers are fickle.
You mean the stuff that all the companies in Silicon Valley can sell to each other?
Yeah, exactly.
as opposed to selling to the rest of us?
Yeah, and now we're in the SaaSpocalypse, right? And so people are like, maybe we should check out some consumer-based products. Yeah. I also think AI right now, too. So we talked about in 2008, the technology that was driving change then, social, location, mobile. I feel the exact same way I did in 2008 today about AI and this new wave of technology and how it is changing consumers.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at eSudo. Running any business, but especially a law firm, means balancing a lot. And technology, frankly, shouldn't be a headache. eSudo makes information technology and cybersecurity simple for law firms large or small. With over 20 years of experience, they specialize in everything from Microsoft 365 management to advanced cybersecurity solutions. They help you to stay ahead of threats, manage your data securely, and keep your tech running smoothly so that you can focus on what matters most, your clients. eSudo understands the legal industry's unique needs, offering tailored solutions to ensure that your firm is always in compliance and always protected. Are you ready to upgrade your firm's technology or get help with your questions? Visit esudo.com.
And so that's why I'm focusing my fund around companies that are building for the consumer, because I believe that's the next, iconic company is going to be in this consumer space.
Yeah. And it's safe assumption. It sounds like the partners that became your initial investors in your fund to support your in ambition, which is now a good word, in your career, in your life, right? Those are people that you had relationships with. Those are people that probably invested in you when you were TaskRabbit, et cetera. All these long-time friends.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, my favorite stage to invest is pre-seed and seed when companies are just getting started. My favorite time at TaskRabbit was when we were under 20 people just trying to figure things out. And I've always stayed the closest with my seed investors. So Anne at Floodgate is one of my dearest friends. Rob Hayes at First Round Capital as well. And so I love having the relationship with founders at that early stage where you can really roll up your sleeves and help.
How does that fit the kind of traditionalist view of venture capital as an industry, right? Where it's kind of so you're the new young emerging manager and you get your small first fund, but then I'm basically to be in the business and be successful, you have to then have your second fund and your third fund, and you basically have to eventually become like a late market PE firm. Right. Or else you're not really a credible VC. Like, do you see it that way for Precedent VC, or do you see Precedent VC kind of like you see everything else in life as I think I'm going to do it my way?
Yeah, you can imagine, Rob, what my answer is. So yes, that is the precedent in venture. You have a fund one, it's on the smaller side. You go up on fund two, you build up on fund 3, 4, 5, and you build this massive firm. Okay. No, that's not what I'm looking to do.
There you go. There we go.
I think that a couple of things. One is if I want to stay focused on seed, which I do, which I love, which I've done for the last 10 years at Fuel as well. I think there's a certain fund size that is the best fund size and enables you to produce the highest return in seed for your LPs. And I think, some of these funds that have they're like, we have $1 billion seed fund. I'm like, how are you going to return capital to your LPs? Like, I don't understand.
Turns out the math tells us you're not, basically, is the real answer.
It turns out the math does not math. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So no, I think, obviously for this first fund, it may be a little undersized. It may be a little smaller. That's the name of the game. That's the precedent in venture. But I think I could see myself, building a brand, maybe staying around $100 million fund. I think that's a nice spot to be if you're focused on seed and you want to have a concentrated portfolio where you can really roll up your sleeves and help founders.
I love it. I always have to caution my comments about venture capital. Like, I'm friends with tons of venture capitalists, and they're by and large good people, right? So I have nothing against them, but I am always one who, my personal tendencies is more to be supportive and interested in the people that are literally those that come from backgrounds that is not traditional, that come into the space with a different, more personalized ambition and a different purposefulness to what they're doing. And really, and it's funny, as you see me taking my sips of water, this is a mug from our friends at Supply Chain Capital. Nora May and Shayna out of LA and Chicago in the CPG kind of food industry.
Yeah.
And I think about them often, not just because they are on the show with me every day, but because as they were getting started, I knew Nora May beforehand, just as an example. And as they were getting started, I always thought to myself, like, man, they're going to be excellent at this that they're going to do at launch with their first fund. But, and not a reflection on them at all. But I always then did worry about are they going to be as excellent, not as individuals, as women, as intelligent people, but are they going to care as much when it's got to be, because this is the way it is, right?
Yes.
When it has to be fund 3, fund 4, fund 5, because it becomes so differently depersonalized, right? It's a different, it'd be like IBM. Like, you start IBM and there's 12 guys and then there's 400,000 people. It's a different company that you're running. It's a different fund, but it sounds like your focus is the fund. And again, maybe because it was born out of the podcast and the books and the relationships, it sounds like, my word, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, like it's serving your life as opposed to you getting on the train of venture capital to be a venture capitalist.
Yeah, I would say it developed and evolved organically, which I always love when that happens because it feels authentic to me. But the venture capital system is a broken system. It is not built for everyone. I will be the first person to tell you that because I lived through it as a Latina founder, right?
Yep.
And I've lived in the system as an investor as well. And I'm not here to blindly tell you like it's a system that works for everyone, because it doesn't.
Right.
And so I think what's important is if you can have fund managers like myself come out with new strategies, new ideas, a new lens of who they're going to deploy capital into, I think that's when the system starts to change. There is no silver bullet here. It'll take decades to really change things massively. But I think that's one of the reasons I felt compelled to do it on my own as well, because I did want to do it my own way. And I know that I have a unique lens to bring to the table.
Good for you. One of the other things I'm curious about, and it plays right into your broader thesis of life and thinking is, as I understand it from the outside, like VC is essentially like you're trained how to pattern match, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the ultimate structure. And so how, again, as a precedent breaking venture capitalist investor, how have you consciously avoided becoming that? Like how at that micro layer, right? We just talked about the macro in the industry, but inside the fund, like how do you avoid doing the math that everybody tells you that's the math that is the math that works? And it's not to say that you're like, I see the math, but I think I can apply the math in a different way and maybe get the same or better results.
Yeah. The math is the math. You can't change the math. So what you got to do is you got to think about, what affects the math and what affects the equation. And, I'll give you a high level example, and then I'm going to give you a really tactical story. So,
please.
When I joined Fuel, the portfolio that we were managing was about 19% female founders. So, or a female, co-founder somewhere in the executive team, 19%. At the end of the third fund, we raised the third fund, a $75 million fund. Those three funds all together were almost 50% female founders. And that was an organic transition. Again, authentic to me, authentic to my lens, unique to what I was bringing to the table, right? So as I've started my own firm, one of the things tactically that I'm looking at is deal flow. I see about 300 deals a quarter, about 1,200 deals a year. Not all of them are consumer, not all of them are pre-seed or seed, whatever, just deal flow in general. So I think a lot of times the trap investors get into is they'll look at a deal and they'll be like, this isn't for me for XYZ reason, and just immediately move on, or it's a cold email and they just like delete it and don't look at it. Every single deal that comes in to any way, shape, or form. It could be a form submission. It could be a LinkedIn. It could be, an email to one of my 5,000 email accounts. Every single deal goes through this algorithm that I've built that is based on a GPT, on an AI copilot. It goes through the algorithm, and the deal immediately gets triaged by category and scored, and then put into a consistent format. So I then look at one format for deals. Anything that scores above a 4.0 that's in a space I'm interested in, I will look at, and I look at it in a consistent format. It tells me about the founders. It tells me about the market size. It tells me about the competitive landscape. So as I was building this, I was realizing that what I'm doing is actually removing a lot of bias from the system.
Interesting.
And, it's kind of like the blind resume test. Like, I don't look at founder names. I don't look at their LinkedIns originally. Like, the AI is doing all of that work for me and then just making it put in a consistent framework. And then the score is really based on market size and traction and other things. And so I have made this deal scoring framework public for anyone to use, because I think it's actually good for the industry, because I think removing bias, removing this pattern matching, removing the human bias from the industry is a good thing. I also think it's nice for founders to be able to put their pitches in and say, how is a venture capitalist going to score this and assess my pitch?
Right. As opposed to like, hey, we've developed some cool algorithmic system that's unique to us. Put it in here. But then, oh, by the way, every other deal that gets decided upon, it turns out it's because it was Joe, the junior partner's cousin's brother. And the same biases just bleed through. They're just using the other part as just like a management tool.
That's right. And the cold emails never get looked at, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
like everything now is getting looked at. And
that transparency, that making it accessible.
Yes, make it
Kind
accessible.
of saying like, it's not secret sauce. It's how we're going to do this at our firm. And we think it's good for both sides of the proverbial table.
Everyone.
Yeah.
And I think most investors that I've talked to. So when I tell investors that I've done this, other GPs, I get two responses. The first response is like, that's super cool. Can we collaborate? And I'm like, yes, let's collaborate. Let's co-develop. I've chatted with Chingona Ventures, with Cherry Rock Capital. Like we're co-developing, we're co-creating together. But the second response I get from other GPs is like, you're just trying to steal my deal flow. Why would I put my deal flow into your system? And I'm like, you are exactly the investor I do not want to co-invest with. Okay.
I mean, in the best kind of way, like, thank you for exposing yourself.
Thank you for exposing yourself, right? Like, because that's the problem. That's one of the problems with this system, with this industry.
Sure.
Everyone, like these investors operate on FOMO, right? They're like fear of missing out, and they're like hoarding deals, and they're not sharing anything. And they're because they're so afraid they can't win. Because what's the other word
that gets used a lot? One of my young venture capital friends in Florida, he uses this one all the time. Consensus.
Oh, consensus.
Is that just another word for pattern matching, basically?
Yeah, it's like consensus
and FOMO
decision making and like all of it. It's all bad. It's all a bad way to operate, right? But a lot of the industry operates this way. So,
but now that in that sense, then that's a great opportunity for a precedent setter, right? Because you're like, hey, I'm not necessarily even here. If I heard you correctly a couple minutes ago, like I'm not necessarily here to like blow up your industry and say that the whole thing has to be done differently. I'm just here to kind of carve out the parts of your industry which are structurally valuable to me, and then apply my own sensibilities and algorithms to it, and create kind of a little adjacent part, a little park that I live in and operate in over here.
Yeah. And provide some transparency to both founders and other investors as well. So I think it's been a nice experiment, because it's kind of the first experiment I've run as Precedent VC of doing something differently, opening up as a framework to others. And then it allows me to figure out who are the other people that I want to co-collaborate with, co-conspirator with, right?
Yeah.
Who are the other rebels in this industry that I can work with? Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, like put up your hand, put your rebel name tag on, so it's easy to spot you at the event, right? So when you meet these founders, which you have such a beautiful, eloquent way to describe them very specifically as you did before, when you meet them, is there just on a very human level, right? I mean, we just met each other. Now, we met each other in a very classic way. We were mutually introduced by someone that we both have a ton of trust and love and respect for. And so that kind of told us, warm intro personified, right? But yet we did meet each other, and we kind of engaged in normal small talk, and how do we make each other comfortable? And we're both podcasting each other, right? Which is the funny part. But like when you meet founders, when you're going through this deal flow, which you have artfully anonymized in many ways. And then when you're meeting them, like, are there things about these people that stand out? And again, let's not call them patterns. Let's call them traits. Let's call them green flags, right? Are there things that you see that you're like, I can see another one of me across the room when I see them. I can smell them. I can sense them when they say something.
I'm looking for the rebels, right? Yeah. I'm looking for the precedent breakers.
And specifically how do you know
with
when
this
you
thesis.
Find them?
Yeah. And so for me, it really is about spending enough time with a founder to understand their story. Okay. Where did they come from? What brought them to this moment? Why? Why is it this company? Why is it this vision? What makes them think they have the unique ability to kind of break through and build it? And I'm specifically looking for stories from founders of times where maybe they've hit a wall, and they've not only like, oh, I figured out a way around the wall. No, I want to hear how you broke through the wall and how you made a path for others, because that's
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Shore Capital. In today's venture capital world, it's not just about cash. It's about relationships. Capital is harder to find. Limited investors have fewer managers that they can trust. And the industry is just filled with far too much hype.
Shore Capital is an early stage venture fund investing in the world's most ruthlessly iterative founders, helping its limited partners to find founders who are solving the world's most dynamic problems, teams that excel in mastering the idea maze, teams moving with a rapid iterative velocity and demonstrating radical resourcefulness. Shore Capital doesn't just write checks though. They become fractional co-founders when needed, offering strategic support, high leverage relationship development, and a deep commitment to the long-term success of their portfolio companies. If you are a ruthlessly iterative founder with a bold vision or a limited investor seeking sustained access to the brightest big thinkers of our time, Shore Capital wants to meet you. So visit shorecapital.notion.site to learn more.
That's an indication that that's the way you think, that's the way you operate, that's the way you act, right? And so, obviously building startups is like extremely difficult, right? Like less than 1%.
It's crazy. It's like crazy people do this stuff.
Yeah, we're all insane. Like I admit, right?
A little bit.
And so the statistics are against you for sure. And so I want to know that you're going to break down walls and that you're going to, pave new paths for others as well.
It's got to be fun.
It's so fun. It's literally the best job in the world. It is.
Right.
It's great. I mean, it's such a privilege.
And to think about it as, again, being kind of a born of this job, which you do, right? Which you obviously also enjoy. Just the combination of like literally having long enough conversations with people to get to know them, to truly understand how they think, not just what they do.
That's right. And what are the experiences that shape them? Yeah. What are those experiences? Like you were so good at getting me to talk about that ambition story early on. I haven't shared that story, with others, but it's so shaped me. And so it's like with founders too, it's like, what are the experiences that shape them? And then you can really get a sense of how they're going to operate.
There's a funny, quick anecdotal story you'll appreciate. I don't normally share this, but you'll appreciate this one particularly, I think, on a bunch of different levels. There's it happens to be another investor, a young guy that I'd met over the years and mentored, and I had him on the podcast. He has a particular point of view. He is what I think is what more investors should be. He's much more like you, less pattern matching, less consensus. But also kind of an outsider in this sense, right? And he came on our show, and I didn't realize at the time that going on a podcast was a huge deal for him. And I sensed that he was really enjoying it and he was into it, but I didn't appreciate the unique value that it held for him. Until I ran into him, say 6 months later or so. He had come out here to the West Coast. He was in LA and he was introducing himself to someone. We were standing next to each other, and then he grabs my arm and nudges me, and he says this story to the guy that he's introducing himself to as he's madly showing him his phone. And he's like, look, that's him. And I was like, what are you doing, dude? I thought he was showing him his LinkedIn or something, right? And he says, no. He says, literally, since you published the episode of our conversation on your show, I condensed it to a link and I put it on my business card and I put it on my virtual business card.
Oh my gosh.
And it's the first thing I use to introduce anybody to me. And he says, and then now I look for, anytime I meet a founder in my deal flow hunting, I look to find them on a podcast because I cannot think of a better way to meet someone and get to know them than to listen to, and this is your words, he said this exact same thing a handful of years ago, to listen to them describe in conversation with someone who's prompting them how they think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just what they do, right? And I was like, ever since that moment, I was like, hey man, podcasting is pretty useful.
I love that. Right? I love that you are literally on a calling card. It's awesome. That's a great story.
And I take that very humbly. It's like I'm the voice that elicits the conversation that allows him to tell the best version of his own story. And that's what he was appreciating. It's right? Like, Rob, I never tell that version of the story that I told with you. And so I want to share that. And I'm humbled by that, right? That's just very kind of you to say what you just said a couple of minutes ago about me.
Yes.
That's the ultimate where I hang up and I go, yeah, see, that was a good show, right? Because I'm doing something that is making people feel comfortable enough to share in that way, which is
absolutely
and the bridge from that to, and I never thought about it in my own life, but now I'm enamored with it in yours. Like the bridge from that to applying essentially those same human principles to investing.
Yes.
What a very natural formula for success for you.
Yes.
right? Maybe not
Yes.
for everybody else, right? But for
Right.
you, this works.
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible. All right. So you sit at this interesting intersection. This is kind of the last question before we get to our last segment. You've been so gracious with your time. I really appreciate you. Right. You're this confluence of things. You're an investor, you're an author, you're a podcaster. All of these roles in some ways kind of, I'll say shape, but maybe as I've listened to you more, it's not shape like in an intentional way. It's more like influence, right? Like how other people are thinking about their own pursuits, their projects, themselves as a leader, et cetera. Do you feel a sense of responsibility in what you're doing? I mean, you teased already the book that's coming out. So we're in a series of books now, right? And we'll mention that book again before we're finished, but like, it's fun for you. It's lucrative for you. It's enjoyable. It suits your life. It's allowed you to build the family life and be the mother that you want to be. All those things is obvious. But like, do you feel a sense of responsibility to the founders that you meet and don't invest in, or meet and invest in, or the people that read your books, or the people that come and engage in your podcasts?
Yeah, it's a great question because I do feel this deep sense of obligation to pave a path for others. And I'll tell you, like, I could live a much easier life and do none of this, okay? It would be much easier not to be out raising a fund from LPs and like every week recording 4 podcasts and like finishing this book and all the things. Now I enjoy it all.
And being a mom to an almost 2-year-old in August, right?
That's right. It's like, I enjoy it all. It's all great, but it is an active choice because I do have this deep sense of obligation. I feel very privileged to have walked the path that I have. Less than 2% of women receive venture capital funding. When you look at Latinas, it's less than 0.6%.
Yeah. Is that even a number?
Absurd.
I don't even think that's a number, right? Yeah.
It's absurd.
Yep.
And I've walked that path. I have lived that life. And that's what makes me feel obligated to bring others along because I can, because I know that I can, and I know that I can do it in my own unique way. And I know that I can have an impact on this industry. I do love this industry. I think it's incredibly exciting. The innovation that's happening, the new precedents that are being set, the new founders that are getting funded. It's so exciting to be a part of. And I feel like I have to bring my unique experience, my unique lens, to bring others along. So that is definitely what drives me.
No, I love that. I was going to ask you this last question. This is kind of our closing segment question, a little bit more actionable bullet point type of takeaway. And it's funny because I wrote it in such a way I was going to ask you, and I was going to try and have you do this for both, say, founders and investors. But I think we've unpacked enough of the investor side to give them a roadmap on how they can do this. And I really want to gift some of your wisdom to the founders that are listening. Right. So
putting my founder hat on.
Yeah. Right. So if a founder, if a founder's listening who wants to become in their world and what they're trying to do, they want to become meaningfully better at seeing what others miss. Right. At seeing past the patterns, at seeing beyond the systems. What are 2 or 3 habits or traits or personality, however you want to describe it, that you would recommend that they try to practice consistently to help them move? So this is kind of the engineering / founder hat, right? Like, how do we break down human behavior? Because there are probably traits, like people can become practiced at becoming more curious or less pattern matching. So what would be 2 or 3 habits that you would recommend to founders who want to look at the world maybe a little bit more like you do?
Yeah, and I unpack this in the book too, Breaking Precedent, which will be out next summer. But I'd say the 2 main things are 1, slowing down and asking, does it really have to be this way? It gets to that entrepreneurial mindset, that entrepreneurial thinking. Don't just rush through life. Stop, pause, think. Does it really have to be this way? And then, I think, and it's kind of having this outsider mindset as well. So that's a muscle you can build, this outsider mindset, right?
Okay.
And I think the other thing is, when you see something that you believe you can change, sometimes founders, myself included, you can take on too much at once. You really need to break things down into smaller chunks, smaller steps, just tiny goals, tiny goals
So
to push forward.
You can change the world, but
not all at once.
You don't change the world all at once. Like
That's right.
It's eating the proverbial elephant, right? It's bite by bite.
Bite by
I love
bite.
that.
Yeah.
No, that is amazing. This was a blast.
So much fun. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a great way to start a Friday morning. I'm not at all surprised because again, we come to each other through our amazing friend, Jolynn. And you'll appreciate this as a podcaster. The funniest part of that little anecdotal story was I was reaching out to Jolynn to get Jolynn and whomever now Jolynn is working with at Candide Group to come on the show. And then in that journey, they were like, well, yeah, but we've also got some stuff we're finishing. We're going to release some big information. So we'd probably love to come on the show when we could release some big information. And then Jolynn, because Jolynn kicks into like big sister or little sister mode in this sense. And then she feels like, I think this sense of like responsibility to help me like fill in the gap that I just didn't fill with her. Right. Yeah. And then she introduces me to you and someone else that I'll interview next week. And I'm just so grateful.
Yes,
and
she's wonderful.
It's been so fun. How do give us all the details? Like how do people find you or follow you? The website, the fund website, the book. We've already said it. The book. What is this? The fourth version of the book? The third or fourth? You said.
Well, the book is the first book. It'll come out next summer.
Okay. Next summer. Okay.
Yeah, it'll come out next summer. So you got to wait a little bit for the book, but you can follow me online at leahsolivan.com. That has the podcast, Breaking Precedent, as well on there. It has information about the book as well as the fund, Precedent VC.
Amazing. Awesome. You are the best. This was terrific. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for helping us figure out how to exist successfully inside of a patterned world without having to just acquiesce ourselves to the way that it's always been done. Right?
It was really fun. Thanks so much, Rob.
A blast. Thank you. And as always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was produced by our team at the Storytellers Company in Mexico City and Los Angeles. And you can always find, follow, subscribe, and share our show as found on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you find your favorite podcast by searching Entrepreneurial Thinkers with Rob Ryan. You can also follow along on our various social media platforms for clips and contents at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And if you'd like to connect with me, our host, you can find me just about anywhere on social under the handle I am Rob Ryan. Thanks and have a great day.